doing a series of videos on ideas for your model railroad. This set covers how you can add a power plant as an industry on your model railroad to add different types of traffic, because you can have many different types of cars going in and out of the power plant, and it doesn't take very much room depending how you build it. Back in this is the Riverside plant, northeast Minneapolis, which is one of the oldest in the United States. The original section was built in 1911, and it was 225 pounds, similar to a steam locomotive. And so this is the old part. There are a bunch of little boilers in here, and this is the coal annex where they would dump coal. There's the coal bunkers in here, and they would dump coal in there. And then over on the other side, there's the turbine generator. But here's the chimneys, just big, tall chimneys. And then in 1924, they still were at about 225 pounds. And then in 1938, they went up to 400 pounds because now they're getting better materials and stuff like that. But they still pushed the coal into the building here. And then they had these peck conveyors. I'll show you a peck conveyor in a minute, just like a grain elevator. They would bring the coal up here and distribute it to the boilers. And then this part was built after World War II. It's much bigger. This is at 900 pounds, 900 degrees. And now we have the efficiency. Down here, the efficiency is about 15%. Here is about 25% efficient. Here it's about 28%. And then the last unit they put in was pretty much the maximum for the regular units, 2,400 PSI at 1,000 degrees. And that's about 35% efficient. So they were getting... It's about 5 times as efficient as the steam locomotive. But here's an old plant, all in one building. Here's probably the coal annex, and then this is probably the turbine generator building here, and they had to have a door for that because they brought the turbine parts in and out, and had to bring the rotors in and out for maintenance. And then over here would be a coal someplace, and then the chimneys on the roof. It used to be the Island plant in St. Paul. And so there's one building, big chimney here, and here's the conveyor. And so there's some kind of coal unloading over here. Here's another one, and out east, as I said, every power plant is different. It's amazing. This is near Philadelphia. And there's the coal comes in back here, and then there's a turbine building over here, and then here's the boiler building with the chimneys. Here's the plant in Red Wing, as long as we just honor John. The coal was delivered over here, and then here's a peck conveyor, and then they brought it across, and then there's bunkers up here, and it goes into the boilers. There's a turbine generators over here, and then the smoke goes out that way. So basically, they brought the coal in inside the building. And so they would shove hopper cars right inside the building, and then it would go down here, and then they had a peck conveyor. Now the peck conveyor, this is what a peck conveyor looks like. Just about every old grain elevator in the country and elsewhere, but they fill these things with a peck of grain, and so they used them for coal too. It would just scoop the coal out. It would take it up. This thing would run like this and dump the coal up here, and then it would go back down and load again. And so this thing's continuously loading, and that's how they got coal up in the building. And so they would get the coal. It would dump up here, and then there was a metal chain conveyor that would take it across to the coal bunker, and then it would go into the boiler that way. Now ash would fall out here. It's about 10%. Usually it's about approximately 10% ash. So if you burn 100 tons of coal, you're going to get 10 tons of ash. And then they would have some kind of a screw conveyor or something. And then they would load coal here, and then unload coal here. And then they would load gondolas with ash. And so you'd see in the boiler building, there would be a door in the end. Now this is what the turbines looked like in the 20s and 30s. The big turbine here, 20 stages, and a big long generator, air-cooled. And so then there's a bunch of generators. Now we'll talk about modeling a little bit. This is the Walther's power plant. It's a nice building from 1910 to 1920. And it's probably self-contained. There's a door on one end. The coal goes in. The turbine generator, boiler, everything's in there, and it has a chimney. Now this substation is like post 1970, much more modern, and so is this transformer. But they make a nice. You could say that they rebuilt the substation. What I did is I took the Walthers power plant and I unwrapped it to make it look a little bigger, and also it doesn't take very much room. So it basically is the same building, and so here's an end of the Walthers building. Here's the other end. Here's a side, a full side, and this is a third of the side, and this is 2/3 of the side. But so it doesn't. This area doesn't take much room,
Great.
but it does offer quite a bit of traffic for a layout.
Yeah.
Now, if you remember the one on the layout, I built this sort of as about the 50s. They were using 40s and 50s. They were using beams like this. Prior to that, they used a lot of lattice work. You'll see lattice work, and so the substation brings the power out and distributes it to the system. This is a side view. The power comes out here again at about 15,000 volts, and then it's sent up to about 100, in this case 115,000 volts, and then there's wires in here. I don't put the wires. Some guys do, because the spiders love them, and you just have a mass of webs and spiders in there. So I learned very quickly you don't put the wires in there. So you just imagine them. You can't really see them anyway. And then these are circuit breakers, just like the circuit breaker in your house. It's 20 amps at 120 volts, but these are 2,000 amps at 115,000 volts. So so they're big, and it's just it's a metal, just a switch that sits in here in a big tub of oil. And this is a transformer. Transformer isn't very big. This would be like about the size of a bathtub inside this big, huge tub of oil. And so from up above, this one has two generators supposedly and two transformers, and then they call this a breaker and a half scheme. It allows the transmission line to go through, but you can isolate the generators, you can isolate the lines and everything, and it allows some redundancy. And so there's 12 circuit breakers. It's obviously compressed. Walthers also makes an indoor substation, which is very nice. And this would be 13,000 volts or 4,000 volts. So the traffic in and out of the plant, as we talked about, there's coal coming in, and back in the day, before World War II, they would use gondolas. And you can see here's a picture of 1931 at one of the NSP plants, Northern States Power, and they have a steam-driven crane and a little tank engine, and they would use the crane to load coal, also to take the ash out of or to load ash. So they would take ash out of the door here in a gondola and then take it someplace and unload it. They also brought in boxcars, because everything back then, before World War II, most everything came by boxcar. They had parts on flat cars, and then tank cars are for oil. And then they had to bring acid in because you have to have super clean water. So during a session, if you remember, we would you start the session with a couple of empty hoppers. And so this is a peaking plant, obviously after 1970 because of it has new Burlington Northern hoppers, but they're empty. And what's happened here is they pushed the hoppers out after they unloaded them. And so then you would bring your freight train in, and they would pick up the two hoppers and then shove in, take three. Here they have three smaller hoppers. They're going to set out, and then they also had some equipment to go into the power plant and a boxcar full of parts. So they had to set all that stuff out, and then they picked up the two hoppers. And so when they left, there were two. They would leave full hoppers, and then the next day there would be two empty hoppers out there again.
Right. Okay.
Now some larger power plants that have their own switching unit. This is a model of sort of a loosely based on the Northern States Power #4 that was over at the plant in St. Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Now, John Armstrong did many things. He has a wonderful book that Calmbeck probably is still making. They're still available. All of his ideas about model railroading. He had the idea that, for example, you're always facing north because we always watch trains from the south side in the northern hemisphere, and so east is always on the right, west is on the left. That makes things very simple. Now, his idea, which is really quite ingenious, a train pulls in here, and it pushes empty hoppers into the coal mine to be loaded, and then it picks up loaded coal cars from here and then takes them away. Now another train sometime later will come over here, and they will pick up the empty hoppers from the power plant, and they will push loaded hoppers into the coal mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought it was he had a lot of really good ideas. This was a cool one. I wanted to do this on the layout that we operated, but unfortunately, as you remember, the 12-inch thick concrete wall kind of prevented that, and a stairway was in the way, so it was too bad. But anyway.
You mentioned John Armstrong. I remember that fabulous article is years and years ago in Model Railroader about the Canandaigua Southern Railroad. And I can remember the opening sentences of the article. He said, planning for the Canandaigua Southern Railroad started exactly 1 hour after paying a down payment on a new house in Silver Spring, Maryland. Reason for the delay was to avoid the appearance of unseemly haste after the 50-minute drive back to the apartment.
Yeah, he was quite something. He's
Yeah.
His rules. I probably should go through the book. That might be nice if people can't get it, because he had like 10 rules. One of them is you always face north. Another one is you only try to design your layout if it's big enough, so you only go over a piece of track once. Because remember, we used to for a while, this year on the layout, you would go through it 2 or 3 times on the same track. Now you don't. Now it's the end of it's point to point end of the railroad.
Okay, I don't remember that.
But I remember everybody was confused. I was confused. Now let's see, where am I? Is this my first lap or second lap? Now you don't have to worry, because you just get on one place, you go 3 times around the basement, and then you end up at the other end, and you can't. So I did end up following his rule, but he had a lot of really good rules, good ideas.